The courtroom was more subdued than it normally was that morning, not because the crowd had dwindled. If anything, the gallery was even more crowded, but because something had shifted. Christine occupied the plaintiff's table, her former heavy binder now lighter, its pages largely turned over, its secrets largely voiced, its burden now effective rather than physical. Kody sat slumped next to his lawyer, eyes empty, jaw clenched, fingers quivering as if they still grasped power. They didn't. Not any longer. The judge combed papers from yesterday's hearing, glasses sitting low on his nose, lips pursed, and then the doors opened, not quietly, but deliberately. Heels clicked, a murmur spread, head swiveled, and there she was, Janelle, no longer sitting in the gallery, no longer observing, no longer quiet. She strode right up front with something pushed against her chest, a navy blue binder, thinner than Christine's, but just as intentional. She didn't blink. When the bailiff approached, she didn't glance at Kody, didn't even look at Robyn's direction. She only met Christine's gaze, one wordless, understanding moment, and then turned to the judge. "Your Honor," Janelle stated, voice steady but tense, "I'd like to present new evidence as an ancillary plaintiff." The courtroom turned. Kody's head jerked toward her. Robyn muttered something caustic under her breath. The judge raised his head, shocked but controlled. "This is a civil hearing with a lead petitioner. Are you making a motion for joinder in the request for financial disclosure?" Janelle nodded. "Yes, sir. I have evidence that backs Christine's claim and," her voice went low, wavered, rose again, "I can confirm she isn't the sole one who was deceived, manipulated, or economically obliterated." The instant Janelle lifted her binder, the courtroom didn't gasp. It suspended its breath, because this wasn't proof. This was treachery from within. Christine blinked once, the feeling wobbling, but not dropping. She didn't weep. She didn't smile. But her hands clutched the table edge a fraction harder, as if something suddenly snapped back into alignment. The judge waved for the clerk. "Please retrieve Mrs. Brown's binder and prepare it for review immediately." Kody leapt to his feet. "She is not a plaintiff. She is upset. That is all this is. This is drama." "Sit down, Mr. Brown," the judge commanded. "You'll speak when addressed." Janelle didn't move, didn't even flinch. The binder left her hands and entered the record like a silent bomb waiting to go off. "Mrs. Brown," the judge said gently, "does your evidence relate to the 2015-2022 period previously discussed?" "Yes," she said. "Specifically, it addresses the LLCs, lies about property tax apportionments, and Kody's withdrawals from my retirement account without notice." Kody's face resembled someone who'd swallowed gravel. Christine sat back slowly, her position more relaxed now, her silence deafening more than ever. Because she wasn't alone anymore. And Kody, who at one time relied on division as a tactic, simply stood there and watched his most powerful financial supporter walk into the flames, folding her arms over a binder of her own. The judge pushed his glasses up his nose and opened the binder with the delicacy of a man about to dismantle an active bomb. One page after another, plastic sheathed, color tabbed, and hand scrawled with the precision that declared this wasn't an impulsive backlash. This was planned. Robyn sat rigid, eyes scanning, as though waiting for her name to be emblazoned in red on every page, whereas Kody folded his arms so hard the veins in his neck started to throb. "This," the judge grumbled out loud, "looks to be a secondary financial record from the Brown family account, 2016 through early 2021. He glanced at Janelle. "Can you identify the author?" "Yes," Janelle answered. "I maintained that record alongside Christine's when I noticed discrepancies on my bank statements. Kody informed me that the deposit plan changed when the show contract was being renegotiated, but the deposits made into my account were not as agreed upon in group sessions." Kody laughed loudly, but the judge remained unfazed. "And these inconsistencies ran for how long?" Janelle stood up straight. 5 years, Your Honor. I asked it several times. I was informed by both Robyn and Kody that the family must use funds for future investments, but those investments were never made known afterwards. I discovered 2 of them were cosmetic improvements to Robyn's 3rd building, done with my own money. It wasn't favoritism anymore. It was money cannibalism, and Janelle had the statistics to back it up. Christine dropped her gaze, shoulders shrugging upward, as if the burden she bore alone for years had finally started splitting across someone else's shoulders. The judge turned to a red tab that read, 2019. His lips compressed. By this, $82,000 was drained out of a pool equity account for a cash acquisition of land near Coyote Pass, recorded under an entity called Robyn Enterprises. Janelle nodded once. "I never did see a document approving that purchase. I never signed anything. but my contributions were part of the pool used to fund it. Robyn spoke at last, her voice brittle. That wasn't theft, it was defensive structuring. We had no idea how the network would react to the family divorce. I was instructed to keep the asset in trust. Who instructed you to do that? The judge demanded flatly. Robyn's mouth dropped open, then closed. Janelle moved forward. She did not have to be told. She knew precisely what was being done. She profited from the silence. She made it easy. Kody moved forward, his tone biting. So now you are turning against me too, after all. I know, Janelle spat, her tone freezing. You turned against me when you fabricated my children's identities so you could get a group insurance policy they were never eligible for. That report is in the back of the binder. The judge's eyebrows shot up. Undefined it is. Tab 8, Janelle answered. Undefined labeled forged dependents. Kody slumped back in his chair, as if something had just shattered behind his eyes. Undefined, and in that instant, nobody could pretend any longer. This wasn't a mere marital breakdown. It was a corporate meltdown masquerading as the plural family. The judge turned slowly to tab 8, his gloved fingers peeling back the sheet protector, with the kind of methodical care usually reserved for evidence in a federal investigation, not a civil divorce hearing. But no one in that room was calling this civil anymore. The document stared up from the page like a snake caught mid-strike, a printed insurance registration form listing 5 dependents, 2 of whom had aged out of eligibility and 1 who didn't exist. Janelle's voice stayed steady, almost eerily calm. I never approved the listing of my son Gabe on that form. He wasn't covered under that plan, and yet his name appears as part of the rate adjustment that allowed Kody to claim a larger benefit pool under the umbrella account. Kody tried to object, leaning into his mic, but the judge didn't even look up. I'm not asking for argument, Mr. Brown, he said sharply. I'm reading your signature. Robyn's breath hitched audibly. Christine stared ahead, eyes glassy but sharp. Janelle continued. That plan saved Robyn $642 a month in premiums because it was structured to be partially employer, backed under Brown Legacy Holdings, but neither Meri, Christine, nor I were listed as authorized members of that LLC. Her fingers tapped lightly on the table, a rhythm to the rage, which means our names, our children's names, were used as leverage for a benefit we were never allowed to touch. They weren't just left out of the benefits, they were used to inflate the system that excluded them. The judge folded the document and handed it to the clerk. This is being referred to the state insurance commissioner. Kody finally snapped, voice rising. You don't understand. These decisions were made under pressure. I was trying to hold the family together financially while also protecting what we built. You didn't protect us, Janelle said, finally turning to face him. You protected her. Every decision, every emergency reallocation, every unexplained deduction ended up in one place, Robyn's portfolio. Robyn opened her mouth, but no words came out. The judge interjected, voice low and deliberate. I have a question for you, Mr. Brown. Did you create Brown Legacy Holdings with the intent to funnel shared income into private assets? No, Kody said quickly, almost too quickly. It was for liability protection. Then why is only one wife listed as a beneficiary? The judge asked. Because she had the best credit score, Kody replied, but even he didn't believe it. Because she was willing to sign the forms the rest of us never saw, Janelle said. And because you always believed your authority didn't need agreement, just submission. Christine finally spoke, her voice soft but cold. He didn't need us to understand. He needed us to stay confused long enough not to ask questions. And in that moment, the courtroom didn't just belong to the judge, or the lawyers, or even the law. It belonged to the women who finally saw through the illusion. Because when Janelle laid her binder on that table, she didn't just join Christine, she joined the war. The clerk had barely passed the insurance document to the evidence table when Janelle's voice rang out again, firm but quieter this time, like a fuse being lit beneath the surface. Tab 9, she said, her eyes never leaving the front of the courtroom. It's an email exchange between Kody and a financial advisor from 2020. It outlines a plan to consolidate the family's assets under a new trust, one not named in any of our group meetings. The judge flipped to it, the fluorescent lighting overhead catching the highlighter strokes. The words alternate holding structure and non-disclosed reallocation practically glowing from the page. Kody rubbed his temples. Robyn was frozen now, her hands curled into fists in her lap, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear. According to this, the judge read aloud, the plan was to shift all incoming TLC earnings from the main family account into a private entity called Redwood Stone Holdings. That account lists only one signatory, Robyn Brown. He looked up. Did any of you consent to this transfer? Christine shook her head slowly. Janelle replied simply. We weren't even told it existed. Kody tried to breathe through his nose, jaw clenched so tight the muscles jumped. It was an emergency fund, just in case the show was cancelled. But Christine spoke now, voice slicing through the stale air like a blade. Then why did the first transfer take place 2 months after I announced I was leaving? Emergency funds don't get created the same week a wife files separation papers. They get created when someone's preparing to survive alone. Janelle nodded in agreement. That account received a lump sum of $128,000 within 4 weeks of Christine's departure. It wasn't reported, it wasn't disclosed, and the LLC registration was filed with an address matching Robyn's mother's home in St. George. The judge blinked. Is that accurate? Janelle turned to the judge. Christine Cross. Reference the zip code. I pulled the filings from public record. Kody finally leaned into the microphone, voice barely above a whisper. You were both digging behind my back. Christine sat still, her hands folded. We were digging behind the illusion, she said, because you buried us in silence and told us to be grateful for the dirt. The room swelled with tension. Even Meri, seated far in the back, shifted forward as if gravity had just changed direction. The judge tapped the table twice, calling for stillness. This court will recess for 10 minutes to allow our forensic analyst to begin verification of the new documents, but no one stood. No one spoke because Janelle had done more than support Christine. She had multiplied the weight of the truth. And Kody, once protected by fractured loyalty, was now staring down the unified fire of 2 women he once thought would never stand shoulder to shoulder. He was wrong, and now the court wasn't just listening, it was preparing. When the court reconvened, something subtle had shifted. Not in the air, not in the lighting, but in the energy that pulsed beneath the benches and echoed off the old oak walls like truth, pressing against years of carefully painted lies. Christine and Janelle now sat beside each other, not like co-plaintiffs in a legal dispute, but like generals in the same trench, hardened by separate battles, but finally fighting under the same banner. Kody, who had once sat tall, now slouched ever so slightly, shoulders tightening as if preparing for a blow he didn't know how to deflect. And Robyn, her hair pulled tighter than usual, her face paler than makeup could conceal, no longer whispered. She stared ahead, still, silent, as the judge cleared his throat and opened with a statement that would shift the entire trajectory of the case. Upon preliminary review, he said, holding up a printed summary from the court, appointed forensic analyst, there is sufficient evidence to suggest that funds were deliberately rerouted from family, held accounts into private entities without proper disclosure or documented approval from all stakeholders. We will be proceeding with a full asset review, retroactive to the formation of the original Brown family trust. The word full landed like a hammer. Kody's jaw flexed. Christine didn't move. Janelle exhaled slowly as if she'd been holding that breath for years. This is a court order, the judge added. All relevant parties are to submit remaining documents within 72 hours. What started as Christine's fight had now become a full-scale audit of everything Kody ever touched. Every dollar, every document, every decision. And that's when Meri stood. No one had expected her to speak. She had watched quietly, faithfully, sometimes brokenly for days, but now, the sound of her heels against the floor felt like a drumbeat. Your Honor, she said, her voice raw and uncertain. I'd like to verify something in Janelle's binder. The judge raised his brow. Do you have personal knowledge of the contents? Meri nodded. Yes, specifically, the 2020 refinancing forms that Kody said we all signed. Christine turned slowly, as if realizing this moment was no longer just about finances, but about memory. Tab 11, Janelle said softly. Meri took the folder from the clerk, flipped to the tab, and stared. Her hands trembled. This is not my signature, she whispered. I remember the meeting, Kody said. The forms didn't need all of us present, that he had our permission, but I never signed this. And yet she looked up, eyes shining with disbelief. Here it is. The courtroom went silent, not stunned, devastated. The judge leaned back. If this signature is confirmed as forged, it may fall under criminal misrepresentation. Kody said nothing. Robyn covered her mouth with one hand. And Christine, calm, collected, almost eerily steady, leaned toward Janelle and whispered, He forgot we talk now. And with those 5 words, a legacy built on division crumbled into something else entirely: accountability. Meri's accusation hovered in the air like an invisible verdict, unspoken yet deafening. Her trembling hand still held the page, but her voice had sharpened with each word. I've signed hundreds of documents in the 30 years I stood by Kody. I know what my signature looks like, that is not mine. The court clerk took the page for examination, sliding it into an evidence sleeve with surgical precision. Kody opened his mouth as if to respond, but no sound came out. His lips simply parted and closed like he was struggling to remember the script he used to control. For decades, he had thrived on disunity, telling each wife a slightly different story, spinning 1,000 lies and counting on the chaos to conceal the truth. But today, the chaos had gone quiet, and in that silence, the truth had a stage. The judge leaned forward, hands tented beneath his chin, eyes scanning each face before speaking again. Let the record show that Meri Brown disputes the authenticity of her signature on financial documents related to a 2020 refinance effort. Pending handwriting analysis, this court may refer the matter for criminal investigation. Robyn visibly recoiled, her hand gripping the edge of the table. I never saw those papers, she said suddenly. I didn't even know Meri was listed. Christine raised her brow. But you benefited from the outcome. Robyn's eyes darted to Kody, who said nothing, his stare locked somewhere between the floor and his own unraveling reflection in the polished wood. This wasn't just about missing money anymore. This was about forged consent, erased voices, and the weaponization of trust. The courtroom murmurs grew louder. Even the court stenographer paused for a moment, pen hovering mid-air, as if the weight of this unfolding scandal had reached even the mechanical. Mrs. Brown, the judge addressed Meri again, did you at any point give verbal authorization for Kody Brown to sign on your behalf? Meri's answer came without hesitation. Never. I was told I wasn't needed. The courtroom fell into a stunned stillness. Christine gently tapped her pen against her own binder, then turned to Janelle. How many of us were listed on that refinancing form? Janelle flipped through her tabs. All 4 of us, Christine, Meri, and even a 5th. The air shifted. A 5th? The judge asked. Who? Janelle hesitated. A woman named April Peterson. She was filed under long-term partner. Christine's eyes widened. Meri blinked, Kody froze, and Robyn didn't even flinch. That was when the cameras, now permitted for public documentation, caught what fans later called the moment Robyn knew it was over. The judge spoke slowly now, almost as if for the record, we'll need full identity verification on that name and an explanation for her inclusion in a legal document representing marital property. Kody finally broke his silence. It was a legal placeholder, he stammered. She wasn't real. She was part of a draft we didn't update. But the lie fell flat, because what had once been a family was now a tribunal. And the more Kody spoke, the more the truth took shape from the ashes of his control. The name April Peterson had done something no prior accusation had accomplished. It had stunned the courtroom into a prolonged, eerie silence that not even the sound of shuffling papers could disturb. Janelle had said it so carefully, so casually, but it detonated like a hidden landmine. The judge had asked only once for clarification, but Kody's mumbled deflection had stirred a hurricane of suspicion. Christine leaned forward, tapping her binder's metal rings for emphasis. That name wasn't just on one document, she said. It shows up in the 2021 tax filing, line 4B listed her as a dependent with financial interest. Robyn's face twitched for the first time in minutes. You told me that was a clerical error, she whispered, but her voice was picked up by the courtroom mic, and every eye turned toward her. You knew? The judge asked, narrowing his eyes. Not until this second, Robyn snapped. He told me she was someone else, a bank rep or something. Kody buried his face in his hands. It was a legal strategy, he muttered. She never existed. I used the name to protect assets in case, but the judge cut him off. You used a fictitious person to shield assets from your legal spouses. Kody tried to shake his head, but the damage was irreversible. The name was a placeholder, he insisted again. It didn't mean anything. Christine opened a folder and held it up for the court camera. This is a wire transfer, March 2022, $75,000 from Redwood Stone Holdings, signed by April Peterson. She wasn't a placeholder, she was a signature. And that signature held the keys to the vault Kody had kept hidden from every woman who ever trusted him. Robyn's hands shook now. You told me it was for the kids' education fund, she said softly, almost to herself. You said April was just the attorney's assistant. Janelle stood. And that's why Christine and I are standing together today, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Because for years we thought we were the problem, that our questions were disrespectful, that asking where the money went made us disloyal. But the real betrayal was systematic and intentional. The judge gestured toward the clerk. I'm issuing an immediate subpoena for all accounts connected to the name April Ann Peterson. If she exists, we will find her. If she doesn't, we will prosecute the fraud. Kody looked like a man unraveling in real time. The courtroom, no longer a place for arguments. It had become a slow-moving avalanche of consequence, and he was standing at the bottom. Meri, still seated quietly at the rear, whispered into the silence. He always had a fifth, we just never had a name for her. Janelle closed her binder. Now we do. And with that the legal noose tightened. Not just around Kody's financial deceptions, but around the illusion of family unity he had hidden behind for so long. The women were no longer waiting for justice. They were driving it, page by page, receipt by receipt, signature by signature. By the next morning, the courtroom gallery was packed beyond capacity. Reporters lined the hallway, camera crews jockeyed for footage, and fans who had followed the family's rise and collapse on reality television now clung to every new revelation like it was gospel. The phrase April Ann Peterson had already begun trending, and public speculation ran wild. Was she real, a mistress, a shell entity, or Kody's most elaborate lie yet? But inside the courtroom, beneath the cameras and whispered headlines, a new energy took hold. Christine and Janelle were no longer presenting evidence to survive. Now they were building a case to win. That morning, Janelle returned to the stand, holding an envelope marked Restricted, 2018 Fane 2022 Personal Funds. The judge looked up. Do you wish to submit additional materials? She nodded and handed the packet to the bailiff. Inside were not just more documents, but a map, a literal flowchart showing how money left the Brown family trust and was funneled into real estate under shell companies that Robyn's brother, Paul, had reportedly helped Kody set up. This map, Janelle said firmly, was created from bank records Kody never thought I'd have access to. But Christine kept her copies. She was always better with paperwork than we gave her credit for. Kody didn't look up. He couldn't. Because for every transfer, every tax, deductible consulting fee, there was now a timestamp, an amount, and an electronic signature. For the first time, the courtroom wasn't just witnessing a breakdown. It was watching a build-up, a case for restitution, prosecution, and maybe even prison. The judge reviewed the binder quietly, turning page after page. These transactions correspond with dates you were on public record claiming financial hardship? He asked. Kody nodded slowly. We were in debt. The show was ending. I did what I had to do. So you lied on state filings? Janelle interjected. He told us the IRS was breathing down our necks while he was stashing 6 figures in a Wyoming property trust under a name he invented. Kody leaned into the mic. That's not. Don't, Robyn snapped. Everyone turned. Don't say it's not true, she said through clenched teeth. You made me tell my kids they couldn't go to college. You made me cry on camera about the mortgage while you hid money with my brother. Gasps rippled through the room. Janelle didn't gloat. She simply opened the final section of her binder, tab 13. Confessions. It contained screenshots, emails, and recorded voice memos sent by Kody to his business advisor that confirmed word for word that he had created the Peterson alias to keep the nosy wives off his back. The judge set the folder down like it had burned his hands. We are now entering the criminal phase of this hearing, he said. Court will reconvene at 9 a.m. with forensic accountants and the district prosecutor present. Christine placed a hand on Janelle's. You did it, she whispered. No, Janelle said, eyes fixed forward. We did. And for the first time in their shared history, they weren't sister wives, they were sisters in arms. The next day's proceedings didn't begin with testimony, it began with silence. Kody Brown entered the courtroom without his trademark bravado, without his confident strut. It didn't mean anything. Christine opened a folder and held it up for the court camera. This is a wire transfer, March 2022. $75,000 from Redwood Stone Holdings, signed by April Peterson. She wasn't a placeholder, she was a signature. And that signature held the keys to the vault Kody had kept hidden from every woman who ever trusted him. Robyn's hands shook now. "You told me it was for the kids' education fund," she said softly, almost to herself. "You said April was just the attorney's assistant." Janelle stood. "And that's why Christine and I are standing together today," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Because for years we thought we were the problem, that our questions were disrespectful, that asking where the money went made us disloyal. But the real betrayal was systematic and intentional." The judge gestured toward the clerk. "I'm issuing an immediate subpoena for all accounts connected to the name April Peterson. If she exists, we will find her. If she doesn't, we will prosecute the fraud." Kody looked like a man unraveling in real time. The courtroom, no longer a place for arguments. It had become a slow-moving avalanche of consequence, and he was standing at the bottom. Meri, still seated quietly at the rear, whispered into the silence. "He always had a fifth, we just never had a name for her." Janelle closed her binder. "Now we do." And with that, the legal noose tightened. Not just around Kody's financial deceptions, but around the illusion of family unity he had hidden behind for so long. The women were no longer waiting for justice. They were driving it, page by page, receipt by receipt, signature by signature. By the next morning, the courtroom gallery was packed beyond capacity. Reporters lined the hallway, camera crews jockeyed for footage, and fans who had followed the family's rise and collapse on reality television now clung to every new revelation like it was gospel. The phrase April Peterson had already begun trending, and public speculation ran wild. Was she real, a mistress, a shell entity, or Kody's most elaborate lie yet? But inside the courtroom, beneath the cameras and whispered headlines, a new energy took hold. Christine and Janelle were no longer presenting evidence to survive. Now they were building a case to win. That morning, Janelle returned to the stand, holding an envelope marked Restricted, 2018 Fane 2022 Personal Funds. The judge looked up. "Do you wish to submit additional materials?" She nodded and handed the packet to the bailiff. Inside were not just more documents, but a map, a literal flowchart showing how money left the Brown family trust and was funneled into real estate under shell companies that Robyn's brother, Paul, had reportedly helped Kody set up. "This map," Janelle said firmly, "was created from bank records Kody never thought I'd have access to. But Christine kept her copies. She was always better with paperwork than we gave her credit for." Kody didn't look up. He couldn't, because for every transfer, every tax, deductible consulting fee, there was now a timestamp, an amount, and an electronic signature. For the first time, the courtroom wasn't just witnessing a breakdown. It was watching a build-up, a case for restitution, prosecution, and maybe even prison. The judge reviewed the binder quietly, turning page after page. "These transactions correspond with dates you were on public record claiming financial hardship?" he asked. Kody nodded slowly. "We were in debt. The show was ending. I did what I had to do." "So you lied on state filings?" Janelle interjected. "He told us the IRS was breathing down our necks while he was stashing 6 figures in a Wyoming property trust under a name he invented." Kody leaned into the mic. "That's not." "Don't," Robyn snapped. Everyone turned. "Don't say it's not true," she said through clenched teeth. "You made me tell my kids they couldn't go to college. You made me cry on camera about the mortgage while you hid money with my brother." Gasps rippled through the room. Janelle didn't gloat. She simply opened the final section of her binder, tab 13, Confessions. It contained screenshots, emails, and recorded voice memos sent by Kody to his business advisor that confirmed word for word that he had created the Peterson alias to keep the nosy wives off his back. The judge set the folder down like it had burned his hands. "We are now entering the criminal phase of this hearing," he said. "Court will reconvene at 9 a.m. with forensic accountants and the district prosecutor present." Christine placed a hand on Janelle's. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Janelle said, eyes fixed forward. "We did." And for the first time in their shared history, they weren't sister wives, they were sisters in arms. The next day's proceedings didn't begin with testimony, it began with silence. Kody Brown entered the courtroom without his trademark bravado, without his confident strut. That line would go viral within hours, retweeted, clipped, memed, and quoted. It became the line that drew a permanent line in the sand between the man Kody wanted to be seen as and the man who had been exposed under oath. As the courtroom emptied, Janelle and Christine didn't look back at Kody. They walked out together, shoulders straight, heads high, no longer bound by fear or silence. Outside, fans lined the courthouse steps. Applause erupted. But Christine didn't wave. Janelle didn't smile. This wasn't a red carpet moment. It was a reckoning, one earned, not given. One built page by page in binders no one thought they'd ever need to open. And as the cameras followed them down the stairs, there was only one message that echoed through the crowd and across the country. They're not sister wives anymore. They're survivors. The courtroom may have emptied, but the shockwaves were just beginning. Within 24 hours of the judge freezing all Coyote Pass related assets and launching a criminal investigation, TLC executives called an emergency meeting, not because they were surprised. Rumors had circled for months, but because Christine and Janelle's testimony had left them with a decision: continue filming a broken narrative or pivot into a real-time legal docuseries. But while network executives played chess, the Brown family played survivor. Kody was reportedly holed up in a cabin outside Flagstaff, unreachable, refusing to turn over access to joint accounts. Robyn, still missing from court, had reportedly flown to Utah under her maiden name. What she carried with her, documents, recordings, or fear, no one knew for sure, but what everyone did know was this: the sister wives saga had officially crossed the line from reality television into real-world litigation. Reporters flooded Janelle and Christine with interview requests. Legal experts on national news analyzed binder excerpts frame by frame. Social media exploded with hashtags like #BinderJustice and #Coyote Pass fraud. But beneath the frenzy, a more personal battle simmered: the children. Savannah, Gabe, Garrison, and even Leon had taken to group texts and video calls, piecing together timelines, questioning what they were told. And worse, what they weren't. "He always said he was protecting us," Savannah wrote in one message that later leaked. But who protects us from him? Now the courtroom chaos wasn't just legal, it was generational. The legacy Kody had claimed to build was unraveling from the inside, one betrayed child at a time. Janelle sat alone on her back porch that night, binder still in her lap, as if afraid to put it down. "It's not just a collection of receipts," she whispered during a live stream that drew 80,000 views in its first hour. "It's the story of what he did when no one was looking." Christine joined the feed halfway through, holding a mug that said "Truth Bombs Brewed Daily." They didn't cry, they didn't gloat, they just talked about debt, gaslighting, empty promises, and how long it took them to believe their own instincts. "It wasn't just Robyn," Christine added quietly. "It was the belief that love meant silence, that loyalty meant swallowing lies. That's over now." The comments section exploded with support, women across the country sharing their own binder moments. Kody's silence, meanwhile, grew deafening. Multiple subpoenas had been issued. Forensic accountants had begun digging deeper. And perhaps most telling, a former show producer came forward anonymously to a tabloid, claiming they had been asked by Kody directly to edit out anything that made Robyn look greedy or controlling. If verified, it could implicate TLC in years of narrative manipulation, turning what was once a ratings hit into potential evidence. In a final twist that week, Christine received a letter from the Attorney General's office confirming that her and Janelle's testimony had triggered a preliminary fraud review on shared business holdings, not just with Kody, but with Robyn's family entities. The walls weren't just closing in, they were collapsing, brick by brick, under the weight of truth too long denied. While Christine and Janelle stood firm in their truth, something unexpected was happening behind the scenes. Another woman was preparing to speak. It wasn't Meri, not yet. It was someone viewers hadn't seen in over a season, Madison, Janelle's oldest daughter, who had long stayed out of the spotlight, but now she had her own binder. She showed up unannounced at the courthouse, documents in hand, a single black folder, and requested a private meeting with the court's appointed forensic team. What she brought with her stunned the room: signed promissory notes from Kody regarding a loan he'd taken from her and Caleb's startup account in 2021, over $64,000 meant to be repaid upon successful development of Coyote Pass. He never repaid it, she never got answers. He looked me in the eye and said this land was our legacy, Madison later said in an off-camera interview. But it was a lie. A lie he built across all our lives. This wasn't just about plural marriage anymore. It was about generational fraud. Christine and Janelle weren't alone in the courtroom, or in spirit. Their children were coming forward, one by one, unafraid to expose the man behind the curtain. And while Kody still hadn't returned to the courthouse, he couldn't avoid what was now public record. The court had opened its doors, but it was the family's silence breaking that finally turned this trial into a movement. That week, Meri posted a cryptic photo to her social media, an unopened binder with a single caption: "Soon." Fans speculated wildly. Had she finally compiled her own evidence? Did she know more than she'd let on? Robyn, meanwhile, had gone completely dark. Her bank account had been flagged in 3 separate states. Subpoenas had reached not just her, but her sister and mother, both listed as advisors. In a business LLC tied to the now infamous My Sister's Closet brand. Behind every reality show smile was a paper trail. And behind every paper trail was a secret waiting to collapse. The judge, now facing what media outlets were calling a family empire imploding in real time, ordered weekly audits, asset lockdowns, and one final directive. Each adult member of the Brown family would be required to submit a sworn affidavit regarding their knowledge of financial transfers between 2017 and 2023. That included Kody, that included Robyn, that included the adult children. The courtroom no longer belonged to one man's narrative. It belonged to everyone he'd hurt. And with Madison's folder now on file and Meri's silence cracking, it was clear Christine and Janelle had sparked something irreversible. The binder revolt had become a legal revolution. The judge's chambers were full of binders, affidavits, ledgers, email printouts, and now names of LLCs, shell companies, secret trust recipients, and off-book transfers Kody thought he had erased forever. But what he hadn't counted on was the collective memory of the women who had lived beside him for decades. Christine's binder had started it. Janelle's expanded it. Madison's folder put a crack in the wall, and then came Meri. She didn't arrive in the courtroom with fanfare. No social post, no TMZ leak. Just a quiet walk through the courtroom doors. A manila envelope clutched in her hand, and inside it, a signed notarized agreement dated 2018, where Kody promised to repay her the $120,000 she'd contributed to the down payment on the Flagstaff house, an amount he later claimed she had gifted to the family. The document included a signature from Robyn as witness. The courtroom went silent as it was read into record. It was the final straw. With 3 wives now testifying, a daughter's independent record submitted, and the court-appointed forensic team confirming discrepancies across 5 business entities, the judge made the announcement a full-scale fraud investigation was now being escalated to the state's Financial Crimes Task Force. Christine and Janelle locked eyes across the courtroom, not with triumph, but with vindication. The truth wasn't a weapon anymore. It was freedom, and they had earned every inch of it. The binders weren't just pages. They were pieces of broken trust stitched into a legal record that even Kody couldn't rewrite. Outside the courthouse, fans gathered behind barricades. There were no TLC cameras, no producers barking directions, just people who had followed these women for over a decade cheering, not for a scandal, but for survival. Kody exited through a side door, flanked by attorneys. No comments, no cameras. Just a man who had lost the illusion of control and couldn't even look his children in the eyes. Robyn was nowhere to be seen. Some said she had fled to Las Vegas. Others claimed she was preparing her own defense. But in the end, the sister wives' legacy didn't belong to her. It belonged to the women who stood up when it mattered. Janelle, Christine, and Meri walked out side by side for the first time in years. No longer wives, no longer rivals, just survivors. And as Christine turned to face the reporters, she held up her now iconic red binder. "This isn't revenge," she said into the mic. This is what truth looks like. It's messy, it's painful, but it's ours, and we're never going back. That moment went viral in under 5 minutes. It became a meme, a movement, a message to women everywhere who had been silenced in the name of loyalty. The series may have ended, but the story was just beginning. A Netflix docuseries was already in development. Madison was co-authoring a book, and Janelle. She launched a non-profit called the Binder Project, providing legal help for women trapped in financial abuse. The courtroom was closed, but the reckoning had only just begun.